One of the things we thought we would do at the end of today is to ask Niall Crowley, who is our rapporteur for the day, just to give some feedback and a flavour and a sense of what has come through, rather than doing, sort of laborious feedback from, albeit very exciting workshops. People are tired at this time of the evening. So I'd like to just introduce, although he needs no introductions, Niall, as you know, is an independent equality expert. And he was Chief Executive Officer with the Equality Authority in Ireland from its establishment in 1999 until 2009. The Equality Authority was established to promote equality and combat discrimination in the areas covered by Irish equality legislation. Prior to that, he worked in the community sector with the Travellers' Rights organisation Pavy Point for 12 years. And he was a member of the National Economic and Social Forum and the National Economic and Social Council. He's also author of a recent book, which is a great read if people haven't read it yet, An Ambition for Equality, published by the Irish Academic Press, and Empty Promises, Bringing the Equality Authority to Heel, which was published very recently by A&A Farmer. So I'd like you to welcome Niall, and he's going to address you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gráinne. For me, marriage equality is very much a model, very much a trendsetter when it comes to innovative campaigning, to a coherent expression of values across a whole range of issues, and to courageous persistence on issues against the odds. They're also a group with great style, and I'm so proud of my purple Rapporteur's clipboard that I wouldn't let it go for anything, so I'll keep it here with me. So I do want to start by congratulating them for their style, for their innovation, and for their courage. I was very struck during the debate this morning when Denise stood up and said she was new to parenting and she felt completely inadequate. Now, I'm not new to parenting, and I know exactly how she feels, and I find it very exciting. But just to warn you that it does get more exciting, because when they, as children grow up, they develop a capacity to give you feedback that's very incisive and very detailed on just how inadequate you are and in what ways you are inadequate. And that's fun too. Fergus Finlay started the day by saying progress is inevitable. And certainly in terms of when you look at the participation in the debate, you'd be struck by the distance we have to travel to make progress. And I think that was captured by somebody in the debate when they said, well, the research was very interesting, but there was somewhat disturbing when it's presenting problems that I experienced 15 years ago. So progress is inevitable. I fully agree with that, but progress can take time. And progress really is only inevitable because there are groups like Marriage Equality, and because there are people like those who've now come forward and formed Believe in Equality. And that's why I believe progress is possible. That's why I think progress is inevitable, because there are those groups and there are these people. Looking back on what happened today, for me it was more than a conference. It was more than interesting speakers. It was more than meeting fun and interesting people. It was all of those. It was more than just setting out a new stall, setting out a new set of demands. Most importantly for me today was about the emergence of a new voice, and the emergence of a voice that is pursuing self-interest in putting forward real needs, but that is expressing solidarity in engaging with LGBT agendas as well as their own needs, and that does stand as a new champion for equality. And I think the name Believe in Equality is a great name, and the potential and promise that holds. For me, that's what today very much was about. Not new demands, but a prioritising of children and young people, of the interests of children and young people, of the rights of children and young people. And above all, an opening up of new potential for action, new potential for new ways of progressing equality, and new potential for building new alliances around equality. And again, I think that's why progress is inevitable and will happen. Today, and looking at the research and listening to the speakers, we did hear stories of serious failure today. Failure of government in terms of a Civil Partnership Act that fails to address the rights of children, of LGBT people. Failure of an equality and human rights infrastructure where a government is able to legislate in a manner that does discriminate against LGBT people and their children. And a failure of an equality and human rights infrastructure where you can have an international convention on the rights of the child that rests and is ignored and is not brought forward in legislation. Failure of schools, failures of schools that are unsure in how to deal with the children of LGBT parents, unable to protect children from bullying and homophobic bullying. Failure of health services, where they fail to recognise the family status of children and parents of same-sex couples. And above all, a failure of society. And I quote from one of the people in the research, "I couldn't tell anyone about that." This is about her non-biological mother's terminal illness. Because I couldn't really say, "Oh, my mum's friend died." That was the extent of it. That was really hard. Very simple quote, but a very disturbing statement of society's failure to recognise and deal with difference. However, despite that litany of failure, today for me wasn't characterised by doom and gloom, by anger and despair, or by sense of grievance. It was characterised very much by excitement, by fun, by hope, and by optimism. And I think that's the mood that takes up a tone that's set by the very first quote that Iris Elliott used this morning and that started it all off. Everyone talks about us, but no one asks us. And it is exciting, it is fun, and it is hugely hopeful when a group comes forward and demands equality. In particular, a group, as Gráinne Healy describes them, of people who have experienced the backlash of denied equality in Ireland. And children and young people in Ireland are not even cherished, and they're certainly not given a voice. Children are deemed to be too immature, too irresponsible, too unpredictable. And I think this has been profoundly challenged by the research, by the report, and by today's event. And there is a demand there. There is a demand to have a voice, and to have a voice that has power and influence. And Marriage Equality have shown themselves ready to listen, ready to work with that voice. But it is a voice that needs to be heard and responded to by many others. There's a demand from children and young people of same-sex relationships to have that voice. There's also a demand to be and to take part in the LGBT community. And the research, I think, very positively suggests that several of the group spoke positively about the gay scene. And one quote I think was interesting: "The best thing to do is to bring us into the community and to make sure it's something everybody can see and hear and that we have a voice in it." And then finally, it was about a demand for visibility, to be a visible part of Irish society. And the research highlighted how the children of LGBT parents experience a sense of invisibility, which is not acceptable. I just highlight 4 messages that I felt came out of the proceedings today. One is a message about being normal. The thing is, and Iris Elliott used this quote, the thing is when they talk about the kids, I'm like, I'm one of the kids, I'm normal, what are you talking about? I'm just the same as your kid. That there is a diversity of shapes and forms of LGBT family, and that is just reflective of contemporary Irish family life. And Geoffrey Shannon, I think, usefully made the point in terms of this being normal, that it isn't even the key point. The key point is that we are obsessed with the form of relationships as opposed to the substance of relationships. And when family becomes relationships and we're focused on the substance of relationships, there shouldn't be so much surprise that this is normal, this is ordinary, this is just the same. Because it is about relationships at the end of the day, and I think he very usefully reinforced that point. Second key message relates to schools. We require all young people up to a certain age to attend school, and therefore it's not surprising that it looms large in the debates brought forward by children and young people. And yet it is a disturbing picture of a lack of capacity in terms of dealing with children of LGBT parents, of protecting children from bullying and from homophobic bullying, an issue of culture. I think Sheila Green talked about the ethos of schools and to what extent the ethos is friendly to equality, friendly to diversity, affords a visibility to gay and lesbian people and to the children of gay and lesbian couples. And also a deficit in terms of practice, in terms of how schools teach, what schools teach about, and how schools operate. And that's not to classify all schools as bad, but there is a systemic problem in our education system where schools lack capacity, have cultural problems, and therefore have poor practice issues. Third key message relates to difference, and it was kind of a confusing message about difference. The children of LGBT parents are indistinguishable, I think was one phrase used. The children of LGBT parents do feel different, therefore I suppose they're not indistinguishable. And then there's a sense that they could be harmed by this difference, whatever this difference is. But I suppose the key message that came out for me is that we still live in a world, and I think it was Helen who used the word embarrassing, in a world where it is embarrassing to be different. And that is a major problem. However difference is perceived or felt or experienced. We stereotype difference, we hide difference, we discriminate against difference. And there's a real challenge, I think, posed to enable children in particular to deal with this world where it is embarrassing to be different, but also enabling all people to change this world where it is embarrassing to be different. It's a painful way to organise society. And the final message, I think, from today is very much about children. And Geoffrey Shannon talks about the children are key stakeholders. The children have a right to have a say. Machtel Vonk talked about the legal rights of the child, and children have the right to the best legal position, and that should not depend on parents or on who their parents are. Geoffrey Shannon talked about the welfare of the child, and how can we know what is the best interest of the child unless we listen to children, unless we help them understand what's going on, and unless we respond to their needs. And I think there is a major challenge, not just to believe in equality, which is big enough, but to believe in equality for children and young people. That is very countercultural in the Ireland of today. Ireland does not believe in equality for children and young people, and that's why I like the name of the new group, and I think the challenge it poses is crucially important for a wider struggle for a more equal society. Finally then, in terms of legacy, conferences can be good experiences, but it is important that they are part of an impetus towards change and towards action for change. And I think there are important indicators of what the legacy might and could and should be from today. First of all, and most obviously, I suppose, is the legacy of a new voice for equality, the Believe in Equality group, the importance of young people and children being their own advocates, taking on their own issues, having power and influence through their own voice, and the importance of sustaining and growing that impetus and that movement and that voice. Secondly, I suppose a key legacy focus needs to be on a new visibility for children of LGBT people, and particularly a new focus on children of LGBT couples among children, that when we're talking about children, that this is part of the diversity of children. And Geoffrey Shannon usefully pointed to the Office of the Minister for Children and the need for the Office of the Minister for Children to take on, to research and to be a source of knowledge of the particular experience, situation and identity of children of LGBT couples. Thirdly, there's a legacy focus in terms of education, the education system and the health system, in terms of the way that they deal with difference, the way that they take steps to adjust for and accommodate and make adjustments for difference, and the way that they are open to difference and actually manage difference in a way that is respectful and takes people from in terms of who they are. And I think there was a useful suggestion, that there's a requirement on schools and on health services to be proactive in this regard. They've got to make the moves. It's not up to people to make that demand. They have to be proactive, and there should be sanctions where they're not proactive. Finally, there's a legacy focus in terms of challenging those failures, the litany of failures. And I think Machtel Vonk usefully points to EU experiences. There are models out there where these issues have been resolved and society still seems to be functioning very, very well. Key sort of failures that need to be addressed are the absence of children in civil partnership legislation, a focus on children in civil partnership legislation, and the absence of access to civil marriage for lesbian and gay couples. And I think that does focus our attention on the Law Reform Commission and the work that they're doing on guardianship, which by all accounts will take little or no account of the children of LGBT couples, but they need to be pushed and pressed to have that focus. It also focuses our attention on constitutional reform, and I think Fergus Finlay talked about the children's rights referendum being very important, but I think we are on the cusp of a wider constitutional reform due to the crisis Irish society is in. And that needs to give us a constitution that is for equality and that is not for inequality, which is the problem with the current constitution. Helen Statham, in her presentation, said that we're on the verge. She felt we were on the verge of good things happening. Now, I have to tell Helen that the banking system here has collapsed. The Catholic Church is completely discredited. The public sector is gradually being dismantled. So it's hard to get that sense. And yet, I am a believer, and I do leave today feeling we are on the verge of good things happening. I do strongly believe that low points offer real opportunity for change. And I think the debates, the energy, and the commitment that we've seen today is the force for change and is the force that is unstoppable. So I wish us all well in that. Thank you.